The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
As one of my Twitter followers wrote today, and you can follow me at AndyPollin1, he wrote, "What sports radio guy takes a vacation during the middle of an NFL season?" Well, for the first time in 47 years of radio, 37 plus of sports radio, this is the first time that I have taken a vacation during a non-bye week during an NFL season. And I have good reason for it. My son got married in Cabo, and he actually got married on a Sunday. He'd done it on a Saturday. I might have tried to find a way to figure out to get back, but okay. It happened on a Sunday. So I missed the Giants game. I missed the Commanders getting to 7-2, and I really missed being here earlier this week, especially on Monday, to talk about the game because I've been doing that forever. I've been talking about Redskin, Washington football team, and Commanders games in Washington on Mondays going back to 1992 when we started sports radio. So, I missed that, and it would only take something like that for it to happen, and that's what it was. So we had a wonderful time, spent a lot of time there. This was quite a long stay. We went last Wednesday and got back on Tuesday night. So I took 6 straight days off. I've rarely done that over the course of my career. In radio, they like you to be gone for only a week or so people don't forget about you. But because of what were extenuating circumstances here, and for wonderful extenuating circumstances, I missed 6 straight days. But back here, and other than Thanksgiving, I don't think I'll be taking off for the rest of the year, and I certainly will not miss a day after game. As a matter of fact, a week from tomorrow will be like a Monday because the Commanders are playing on Thursday night in Philadelphia. All right, before I launch into some of the details of the weekend and get into what's going on with the Commanders, if you've listened to me for a long time, I think you know what my politics are. And I am not going to get into politics here, but you know that I did not vote for Donald Trump. And Donald Trump won fairly and squarely, just as Joe Biden won in 2020. And for the next 4 years, he's going to be president of the United States. And for better or for worse, I am an American citizen. And I participated in the democratic process of voting, as did millions and millions and millions of other Americans, and it was a landslide victory for Donald Trump. So the majority of my fellow citizens want him to be president of the United States. The way he conducts his life does not line up with mine. I believe very much in the truth, and he's had documented lies, including that he won the election in 2020. But that's not what we need to focus on. How do you battle hate? You battle it with love. You battle it with kindness. And you battle it with treating other people the way that you want to be treated, not the way that others might take a cue from the way Trump ran his campaign. So we move on. This will probably be the last time I talk about this, and I don't want to go into great detail, but if you are a person, and no matter what side of the aisle you're on, we need to tone things down here. We need to tone it down because it's going to be 4 years, and hopefully the country gets better. Hopefully the reason that people wanted a change from the Democratic Party might be that they want to improve the economy greatly, and hopefully it does improve. And hopefully that some of the things that are going on in the world change, like what's going on in the Middle East and what's going on in Ukraine. Those things change and change for the better. But, we are in a different world now, and we have had a system of government which will stay in place. The Constitution needs to be upheld, and hopefully it will be. But we're going to have a different form of government than we've had before. And we'll see. We'll see how that works out. And in 4 years, we'll have a choice. And someone other than Donald Trump will be in the White House 4 years from January. And in the next 4 years, we need to combat whatever hate there may be in the country, whatever problems there may be, and be good citizens and treat other people the way that you want to be treated. So that's my little soapbox on that, and I think I'm ready to turn the page on the way I have felt for the last 6 months or so, and the hope that it wouldn't come to this, but this is what it is. And as long as I remain a citizen of the United States of America, I'm going to do my best to make it as good a place for all of us to live as possible. And I think every one of us needs to feel the same way. A little bit on the wedding. My son has been living with his now wife for a number of years. They met in Boston and moved together to New York, first living in a shoebox apartment, which ultimately became overrun with mice. And during the pandemic, when apartment prices really dropped, they took advantage of that and moved to a really good-sized apartment where they lived for, the last 4 years. And then over the summer, she had completed her dental schooling. That's why they went to New York at Columbia University. She graduated at the top of her class. She did a 2-year residency, and after 6 years of intense work to become a full-fledged dentist, she felt like she wanted to enjoy New York, which she hadn't been able to do because she had been working so intently. So she worked part-time, and they got to see plays. They went to a number of games and did some sightseeing and really enjoyed life. And now they are moving to her hometown, which I'm in favor of because as a grandparent, I see the advantage of being close to my daughter and my granddaughter and what will be a grandson who will arrive sometime in February. There's great advantage to that, and great advantage, I think, to my daughter and her husband that we can babysit and take care of things for them. So that's an important thing, and I'm glad that he is now going to be near his in-laws in Seattle. I'm not especially glad that he's so far away, but as I've said a number of times, it was a 4-hour bus ride to New York, and this will be under 6 hours. They have a number of direct flights on Alaska Air at all 3 airports, so it's easy to get to. And it's a fun city. We went there in August for what was actually the legal wedding. When you get married out of the country, as they did in Cabo, there has to have been some type of ceremony done in the United States. And her father is a lawyer and was a mentor to a judge who performed the ceremony in his chambers back in August. So I spent a few days out there, and we'll be spending, obviously, a lot more time as the years go by, and really looking forward to that. We had the wedding at an outdoor venue in Cabo. If you've ever been there, it's absolutely beautiful. We had my whole family there, my sisters. One of them is married, and my brother was there, and one of my nieces and her boyfriend came. It was just a really great family get-together in a beautiful place, and it was a gorgeous wedding with a lot of fun, music and dancing and fabulous food at a restaurant, which we actually ate at a night later. It was a great way to celebrate the union of two wonderful people. My son, who's now 33, and my daughter-in-law, who's about to turn 33. We have known her, obviously, for a long, long time, ever since they met. And it was just a great experience. And I'm so happy that this happened over that period of time. It happened at a time which I couldn't control. They had wanted to have it at a different period of time, but you have issues with hurricanes and so forth in that area. So this was the safest time to have it. And the weather was absolutely gorgeous. It absolutely was a great time of year to have it. And although it's right in the middle of a football season that I didn't expect, I didn't expect to be catching up on the Red Zone channel to watch the Commanders get to 7-2, but that's where they are. And I had taped the game, so I got to watch it yesterday. And I'll tell you something. This is so far beyond expectations with Jayden Daniels. We knew that he could run. We knew he had a strong arm. Well, there have been other quarterbacks who have come along, and some pretty damn good ones. There's a lot of comparisons to Michael Vick. But Michael Vick had some personal issues, as he will tell you, and ultimately went to jail for a couple of years for the dogfighting business that he had. and lied about it to the commissioner of the NFL. He missed 2 full seasons. And he will also tell you that he didn't put in the work to be great. He relied mostly on his individual skills. And it worked well enough for him, but in retrospect, he should have spent more time watching tape. Daniels is a tape nerd. He gets in at 5:30 in the morning, and he's watching tape, and you can see what it's done for him. He is incredibly accurate. He's got accuracy like a Hall of Famer in Troy Aikman, although Aikman didn't have wheels like this. I mean, he can run like Vic. He's got the arm of Vic, but he's got the intelligence and the feel for the game that he gets from watching all that tape and delivering the ball as well as he does. It's incredible to watch. And I know there's Snyder PTSD, and there's a part of all of us that says, oh, boy, this can't last. But it's lasting. And as we get deeper and deeper into the season, a season that Dan Quinn said would be a recalibration, I don't think you rule out Super Bowl contender. They're one of a handful of teams in the NFC. And they have 2 games to go with the Dallas Cowboys, who look like they may lose Dak Prescott for the rest of the year. Will Cooper Rush be great? We don't know. But the injury that they're talking about with Prescott is the hamstring has come off the bone. That doesn't sound like it's a 2 or 3 week injury. He'll definitely miss the game that's coming up in a few weeks. They're playing Pittsburgh at home on Sunday. Then they play at Philadelphia a week from tonight. And then they get the mini bye before Dallas comes to town. It's almost certain that'll be Cooper Rush. They have not put Dak on injured reserve, but it looks like that's coming, and it could be even season ending. And then they finish up the year at Dallas in a game that could very well be for playoff positioning, and even, dare I say, with 2 losses, maybe a first-round bye? Could they get the number 1 seed in the NFC? Maybe not. But they're going to be sitting pretty at that point. If they go 500 the rest of the way, you're looking at 11 wins. Last time they had 11 wins, they won the Super Bowl. So there's a lot of things here to really be hopeful about with this team, and things that we just did not expect. And as we go further and further, the recalibration that Dan Quinn talked about, we're recalibrating our expectations week by week. You know, when they lost the opener against Tampa, it's go, well, okay, it's going to be a year of some growing pains, and the quarterback is going to get himself killed if he's running 16 times a game. He's going to have to make improvements on that, and he has, week by week by week. And you see him when he runs now. His sliding maybe still needs a little bit of work. There were a couple of awkward slides against the Giants, but he's running out of bounds. He's not trying to get extra yardage. Once he's pretty sure he's got the first down, he's gonna live for another play. And this has been such a joy to watch. I mentioned, this is now 32 years of doing sports radio in Washington. The most of the time has been hand-wringing about either the fact that they didn't have a quarterback or that the team wasn't that good. We've had years they were 7-1 and missed the playoffs. They were 6-2 and they finished 500. The collapse doesn't look like it's going to happen, and they're favored against a good Pittsburgh team on Sunday. We'll get into more of that. The injury report is a little bit troubling for this week. Not unexpected with Marshon Lattimore, who they just got, that he's got a hamstring injury, which he said yesterday that he'll leave it up to the trainers, but it just recently happened, so it's unlikely he's going to play. Could he play against Philadelphia? That's a possibility. The other one that you may not be aware of, and this is significant given the early season kicking troubles that they had, and they finally got one in Austin Siebert. He's got a hip injury and did not practice yesterday. Doesn't mean he won't be able to play Sunday, but if they have to go out and shop for another kicker and you have another close game, which could come down to a field goal or even an extra point, that's a concern. That's a bit of a concern. The Brian Robinson injury, a hamstring, which kept him out last week, he's indicating to reporters that he should be ready to go, and he was limited in practice yesterday, but was out on the practice field. So there's that. There's the other injury to Cornelius Lucas, the tackle, who's got an ankle, did not practice, but could be able to go. He's a backup anyway, so whether they use him or not is not as huge of a concern. But I would say that the Seabird injury is something to be concerned about. As for the Lattimore trade, which they made on Tuesday at the trade deadline, and they gave up for him a third-rounder, a fourth-rounder, and a sixth-rounder in exchange for Lattimore and a fifth-rounder in next year's draft. This was yesterday. This was the general manager, Adam Peters, who as Barry Zerluga writes today, the next bad move he makes will be his first one. Everything he's done has turned to gold. This was what he told the media about acquiring Marshon Lattimore from the New Orleans Saints.
You get one of the best corners in the entire league, and a guy who fits how we play. He's a four-time Pro Bowler. He's a dog competitor. He's he's what you want in a corner, and what's really cool is we were able to know a lot more about him. With he's one. You guys probably read a cool story about this, but we have 4 players from the Ohio State 2014 recruiting class now, and so we're trying to corner the market there. Those guys are pretty good. I don't know how they lost any games, but so there's some guys in this locker room that knew him already, and so that's going to make this transition even easier, and we're pumped to have him.
Yeah, hey, if they don't win the Super Bowl, maybe they can win the national championship. Hardy har har har. The key to this is how they were able to do this. And if you look at years past and the way they treated draft picks, it's a farce. Some of the moves that were made during Joe Gibbs 2, and that's about as much success as they had in the Dan Snyder era, making the playoffs twice over that 4-year period of time. The discarding of draft picks was absolutely ridiculous. I mean, when they sent Champ Bailey, a Hall of Fame cornerback, to the Denver Broncos to get Kid Bro Sweets there, Clinton Portis, they gave up a third-rounder. They gave up a draft pick and a Hall of Fame corner for a really good running back. Those are the kind of moves they made. Mark Brunell, who was about to be cut by Jacksonville, they gave up a third-rounder to get him. What Adam Peters has been able to do is take a draft class, make it bigger than it was at the beginning of the season, and pick up outstanding players along the way like Lattimore. It's how you run a business, and they're finally running the business like the business should be run. We'll get into more of that, more reaction to the deal as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
So a little over 30 years ago, when free agency came to the NFL, Tony Kornheiser wrote a column which said the draft is dead. He said, no longer are you going to have to spin the wheel and hope for the best for players coming out of college. You will have them battle-tested in the NFL, and when they become available, you can decide to add them or not to your team, or your own guys, you can let them go, knowing that you can get somebody else from somebody else's team. And turned out that Tony was dead wrong. With the advent of free agency, and more importantly, the salary cap that came along with it, the draft is more important than ever. And, the window for the Commanders to win a Super Bowl may very well be over the next 4 years. It may be when Jayden Daniels plays under a rookie contract. Once he gets the second deal, which the way things are going, he may top $70 million a year. That's going to hamstring him in the salary cap. Now, you a good GM and a good capologist knows how to manage it. There are things that you can do, but you have to constantly be working with the draft so that your roster is full of players who are on rookie deals rather than loaded up on bloated free agent deals. And in many cases, in fact, in most cases, when a player becomes available, the other team has decided that he's done, or he's done for what they do, and they let him go. Well, the draft, and more importantly, the draft capital, the picks that you acquire, that's how you build your football team. And Adam Peters learned at the feet of one of the best in Bill Belichick, who during the glory years used to do this. He would trade away a player a year too early, get draft picks in return. Sometimes you'd check the stock room and there were a bunch of number ones. And, yeah, on occasion, when they got hit with penalties like Spygate. They had to give up a number one. Didn't matter. They had a bunch more in there, so it was okay. And that's only part of it. But the main thing is it allows you to move up and down and maneuver when you need to maneuver. So when they trade pretty valuable draft picks to the Saints for a player who has declined to some degree in recent years. He was the Defensive Rookie of the Year when he came out in 2017, and he was nominated for 4 Pro Bowls in his first 5 years, but has not appeared in the Pro Bowl since 2021 and has had only 1 interception in each of the last 2 years. But he does have the ability to be a great corner for a team that has struggled in the secondary this year. So when you give up a 3rd and a 4th and a 6th and get a 5th and a player in return, it means the cupboard is pretty well stocked. And this was Adam Peters yesterday on how he felt comfortable enough to make this move.
Really, we were able to pick up some draft picks earlier this year, and we had a surplus. We had 9 picks, and so that made us feel a little more comfortable doing this. And then also you're looking at the landscape of this next year's draft, this next year's free agency class, and knowing that with some of our corners that are going to be coming up as free agents, that we're going to need to either re-sign one of those guys or dip into free agency or the draft. So you weigh all that, and then you see, okay, is this player better or easier to get than maybe a free agent or a draft pick? And so knowing all that, and then knowing that we had a couple extra picks, and we still feel really good. We still have 7 picks, and I think if you look at the charts, our picks are actually, what we have now is more in terms of points than what we had, back in August. So we still feel really good about that. We have what's currently a really high 3rd round pick. We'll see how that ends. The season ends, but and that was one pick that we certainly didn't want to give up for this, and so long answer, but that's kind of how we looked at it.
So think about this: he's got the same number of draft picks that he had back in August, but the point value of those picks is higher, and he picked up a big need player. A corner, a guy who's been an all-pro, and at 28 may have some prime years left. Think about that. And that's what happens when you have a properly run organization. When you hire the general manager first, he picks the coach. The general manager concentrates on getting players for the coach, and it's not a, quote, coach-centric operation as it was with the in-over-his-head Ron Rivera. That is how things have changed so quickly. Did anyone expect this to happen as quickly as it did, including the people who run the team? No. But it just goes to show you that when you run an operation professionally, as it hadn't been done in nearly a quarter of a century, these are the results. Yeah, things have to fall into place. Nobody knew that Jayden Daniels would be this good. I think he would have gone number 1 if that were the case. But he is this good, and the team has been this good, and Knock for Micah here stayed relatively healthy. They've had, 1 or 2 season-ending injuries. Jonathan Allen's not playing, but Johnny Newton may turn out to be a better player. Jonathan Allen really hadn't done a whole lot this season. So this is what happens when you have someone in charge of this, just this. This is a full-time job, acquiring players, managing the roster, looking at the salary cap, working with the salary cap people. It's not that complicated. But if you bypass it with an owner who hops off his yacht and tells the coaching staff to take a player that they didn't want, then you get what you get. And 7 wins, they're close to doubling what they got last year. If they beat Pittsburgh, that'll be win number 8. And again, if they go 500 the rest of the way, they're going to wind up with 11 wins, which hasn't happened since the Super Bowl season, the magical Super Bowl season. We're coming up on, 33 years? It'll be January, it'll be 33 years since they won the Super Bowl. Remarkable. Reaction. Now, this is Dan Quinn, and Peters went through this long thing at the news conference yesterday about how closely he works with Quinn on all the players. Like, if he wants to get somebody, he doesn't just say, hey, I got your corner. he gets his input on it. And Quinn's been around a long time. He's coached, been a head coach before with the Falcons, defensive coordinator with Seattle when they won a Super Bowl last year, 2 seasons with the Dallas Cowboys as defensive coordinator. So when Quinn was asked yesterday what was his reaction when Adam Peters approached him about the idea of acquiring Lattimore,
I'd say you had me at hello. This was easy, man. To get and acquire a player of Sean's caliber, the toughness, the physicality. Whether it was this month, 6 months, from now, like this is a player that you'd want to be on your team. He stands for the right stuff. He's got an attitude to battle, and we're really pumped to have him here.
I was going to ask you, too, what do you think of him just a player and over the years, and how does he fit? How do you see envisioning with him and then Benjamin and Mike, how their roles might change?
He's certainly been exposed to a good system, and I'd say I've had the opportunity to coach against him as well. And not everybody can go and match on the different players in different spots, left side, right side, in the slot, and doing that. And so you got to be a smart guy to be able to do that. And he's shown over the course of his career the ability to move inside and outside and staying connected to receivers, John. That's really the name of the game. And he's able to play it tight. He's a good tackler. So, we're pumped about him, man.
Yeah, and Lattimore, he's gone from a team that's already fired his coach and Dennis Allen, a team, the Saints, going nowhere this year, to a team that has a chance to contend. And first chance he had yesterday to talk to the Washington media about what he's adding to the team.
Considering what the Commanders have been doing this year, when your agent calls and says it's Washington that's calling about you, how does that hit you?
It's good. They got a good young quarterback. They got good things going on. Well, we do. Let me change how I'm talking. But we got stuff going on here, so it's a great situation for me to be in. So I'm excited for it.
What do you think about your initial fit with this defense?
I really couldn't tell you at first, to be honest, because I was so worried about us in New Orleans. So I couldn't tell you. So I'm ready, to see where I fit in at and learn the playbook, everything, and get it done.
Marshon, how's it?
You said what?
What do you add to this team?
Experience first. It's my 8th year in the league, and just a dog. Me personally. I'm going to go out there and do everything I can for the team to get the win. Just being a dog.
Marshon, how's the hamstring, and what is the timetable expectation of you getting on the field?
I don't know. That's up to the trainers. The injury just happened, so, I don't really know what's going on as far as, timetable, getting back on the field. So, it's up to them.
Yeah, and I think you could pretty much rule him out for this week's game against Pittsburgh. But then question is, would he be ready to go in the game 4 days later against the Philadelphia Eagles? And if not in that game, then they have a nice long stretch before they play the Dallas Cowboys here. So it's possible that his first game is going to be against Dallas. And given where the record is right now, not that you don't want to win the next 2 against the teams from Pennsylvania, but, once you get back into divisional play, they're already 2-0 after sweeping the Giants. Daniels becoming the first rookie quarterback to sweep the Giants in the season. Not that that's happened many times. How many rookie quarterbacks have been starters in the NFC East, and how many of them have been able to sweep the Giants? Have been generally a good team, but still, they're in good shape there, and you might want to play it safe. But if he's ready to go against Philadelphia, that's going to be really nice, and he also will have had time to get used to the system, to learn some things. Remember, Noah Brown, as valuable as he's been, they got him really late. They got him just before the start of the season after Houston cut him, and he missed the first game. But once he's gotten in there, he's been huge, including catching the Hail Mary against the Bears. Let me get to what used to go on here and what has gone on with the Cleveland Browns, the Hindenburg of deals in getting Deshaun Watson, who is out for the year with an Achilles tear and has been absolutely terrible when he's played. He's been hurt a lot with Cleveland, and came with the contract that many said would change the face of quarterback deals in the NFL. That the fact that Watson got all guaranteed money, I think it was $240 million, that they were going to have to do it, but they haven't. They've held the line on that. And so far, nobody else has gotten a fully guaranteed deal. Not that any of them are hurting in terms of the deals that they signed for, but this has been a complete, unmitigated disaster for the Cleveland Browns. And yesterday, the general manager of the team, Andrew Berry, was asked about him for 2025, and he was very non-committal. He says that's always possible, but didn't necessarily say that, he's going to be back next year and is going to be our starting quarterback. He said, our focus with Deshaun, I would say for any player with a season-ending injury, with a major injury, is first and foremost with the recovery and to make sure he gets healthy from the Achilles injury. Everything else we'll deal with at a later moment. Now, here's what they're dealing with. They're dealing with $92 million in guaranteed money for the next 2 years for a quarterback. And if you saw the Washington game against Cleveland, he's terrible. He's terrible right now. So what are the options for the Cleveland Browns moving forward? This was Tom Pelissero of the NFL Network on yesterday with Dan Patrick.
$92 million is what they still owe over the next 2 years. Forget this year for a second because they already paid that down anyway. They owe him $92 million over the next 2 years. That would be the most cash that we've ever seen a team eat. But we just saw the Broncos last year eat, it was somewhere around $40 million of Russell Wilson just to say we are moving on. How do the Browns get out of things with Deshaun Watson? I mean, there's several different ways this could go. One is you just say, we're paying him anyway. Let's draft a quarterback, sign a quarterback, whatever. Let Deshaun come in. It's an open competition, and we see what happens. And we either cut him or he's the backup, or maybe, he finally gets back and is the starter again, but we let it ride. The second option of this is you pull off a Brock Osweiler style trade where you send assets with the player to get rid of the player and get rid of his money. $92 million would be an extreme amount to trade. I mean, Brock Osweiler, that's always the example because the Browns at the time took on his $17 million salary and got a second-round pick out of it. Well, if a second-round pick's worth $17 million, what do you get for $92 million? I mean, you're probably throwing good money after bad, literally and figuratively, if you're saying, all right, let's send 2 first-round picks just to try to get rid of Deshaun's money. So the third option is you cut him. You just say, we're going to eat the $92 million. It is what it is. We're going to take it now, and Deshaun can go on to the next thing, and we are getting a clean break. That would hurt, obviously, because they put so much into this, trading several first-round picks, giving them a $230 million fully guaranteed contract, taking all the flack that they did, and a lot of it justified for making that trade at the time that they did it. But, they thought they were getting a top 5 quarterback. Instead, they got a guy who on paper is the least efficient quarterback in the entire NFL, is hurt once again, and has played a grand total of, I want to say it's 19 games over the past 4 seasons combined. That's where they are. I think you can rebuild, but it's going to take a little bit of, it's going to take some pain. We've seen teams do it. The Bills did it early on when Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane were there. Just took the boatload of the cap consequences and everything else. They had a really down second year, but then, you got that thing building in the right direction. It's not impossible. It'll hurt. There's going to be pain, but it's not impossible.
Yeah. I mean, look, what is the future with Deshaun Watson? If he stays on your roster, it's only because you don't want to take the pain of cutting him. But you got to do it. You can't play him anymore. I mean, could he show up off this Achilles tear and be great? Well, look, Kirk Cousins tore his Achilles, and although he's playing really well now, he struggled at the beginning of the season, and the game that Deshaun Watson plays is different. Kirk Cousins never ran like that, and Deshaun Watson relies on his wheels a lot, and they're going to be compromised no matter what. It's going to take him a while to come back from this. Again, I think the way to go is to just move on. Just say, that's it, and you bottom out. Look at what happened here. They bottomed out with 4 wins. They played a cheap rookie, basically a rookie quarterback in Sam Howell last year, and they took their lumps and finished low enough to draft number 2, and they wind up with, looks like, a guy who could be here for 12 to 15 years as a Hall of Fame quarterback. I know that's jumping the gun. He's only played half a season. Understand that. But all signs are pointing to that, and that's what you're always looking for, and that's what the Browns did in making a deal with the devil. They took a guy who had to go in Houston after all the settlements that he made with women who had filed civil suits against him for sexual harassment, and he had to get out of there. They knew that he was going to be suspended by the league. Of that $240 million, they only paid him $1 million the first year, knowing that he was going to lose game checks. And they bent over so far backwards for a player who's turned out to be a turd that you got to put this behind you. You got to take the pain. You got to take the losses that you're going to take next year. With or without him, they're going to lose games. If he plays next year, they're still going to lose. So lose, get the money out of there, get him out of your building, change the culture as much as you can, because I think he's a factor in it. The team is still good defensively and good enough maybe to stay in games and move on. Jameis Winston may keep you competitive, relatively competitive, and then you'll draft a quarterback. But that's a great lesson that the Cleveland Browns learned the hard way and showed the rest of the league, and especially the way the league is going with young quarterbacks. Big money free agent guys. It doesn't really work the same. And once in a while you're going to get a Matt Stafford, and he's the missing piece for the Los Angeles Rams. But Jared Goff, who was offloaded for Stafford to the Lions, who are going to eat a big part of the contract in order to get the draft picks that came with him in return. Well, he's turned out to be a franchise quarterback for them. So, going for the gusto, as the Browns did, wound up biting them. And the only way to get through this and to move on to the next chapter is just turn the page, take the hit, and find your next quarterback in the draft. And you'll be drafting high. So, and quarterbacks are being turned out at a faster rate now, I think. You have maybe a down year now and then. But the Jayden Daniels and the Caleb Williams of the world, they're coming through. And I'll tell you, one of the reasons for this, and this is part of the evolution of the position, which traces in a large part back to Doug Williams, is that African Americans were always put at, especially fast ones, were always put at wide receiver or running back. They were thought to not have the smarts to play quarterback. Well, now, at a very young age, the people are realizing the great athletic ability that they have and arm strength and everything else that you look for of a quarterback of any color. So they get the opportunity to play, and they're being developed at a much higher rate than they were before. Guys who spent their careers at other positions back in the 70s and the 80s today might be quarterbacks, and they might be the next Jayden Daniels or the next Caleb Williams. So I would just move on. I would turn the page on Deshaun Watson and see what comes up in the draft, when you're going to be, no doubt, drafting high. All right, next hour, we'll get to what Jayden Daniels says about his health as he's managed to play hurt the last couple of weeks and gets ready to play the Pittsburgh Steelers on Sunday. More reaction to the trade to bring in Marshon Lattimore, and also Bob Costas on his decision not to do any more baseball play-by-play. Stay with us. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. In case you missed the first hour, I am back. I missed 6 straight days, which almost never happens at any time of the year for me, much less the football season, the heart of the football season. It's the first time I've taken any time off that I can remember during a season in the 37-plus years I've been doing sports radio, and really even the 47 years that I've been doing radio, period. But we had circumstances which were wonderful circumstances. My son got married in Cabo over the weekend. It was actually a Sunday wedding, so there was no way I could be back for the Monday morning follow-up off the Giants game. But I am back, catching up on a lot of things and discussing where we are as a country now as we move forward with the second Donald Trump administration. I spent a little time on that in the first hour, and probably won't spend any more time on that at all as we move forward. But there is a football game, and a big football game, for the Washington football team as we are into November. Like most years, it's are we going to have meaningful games in December? Well, now we can almost be guaranteed meaningful games in September. And if they finished 500 over the last games of the season, what have they played? 9 games, so they got 8 left to go 4-4. You're going to have an 11-win season. The last time they had an 11-win season Mark Rippon was the quarterback, and Joe Gibbs was in his first go-round. So it has been a long, long time. As a matter of fact, you probably know this, but if you don't, Washington is the only franchise that has not had an 11-win season since the 91 season, and that includes the Cleveland Browns, who had a 1-15 season and an 0-16 season. The Detroit Lions, who are now one of the better teams in the NFL, but for most of those 30-plus years were one of the worst teams in the NFL and had an 0-16. They had an 11-win season. So they're sitting on that, and right now, the recalibration that Dan Quinn talked about at the beginning of the year, he said he didn't want to use the word rebuilding when everybody knew it was a rebuilding year. The recalibration happens week by week now. We go, oh, well, okay, maybe things can go right and they can get 8-9 wins and slip into the playoffs. Well, now as the games continue and the weeks go by and we look at other teams and the struggles that they're having, the Commanders just get better and better and better. They make the plays they need to make to win the game. I mean, they've had so many years where they've had one play that's almost beaten them or has beaten them, whereas, including the Hail Mary, of course, which is, going to happen maybe once every 20 years, but they had it against the Chicago Bears, a game that they looked like they were going to lose until the last play, and making the plays necessary to close out the New York Giants and, taking a knee at the 1-yard line to run out the clock at the end of the game. How many times have we seen that over the years? And a good part of it has to do with the complete package that Jayden Daniels is. We knew he was a running quarterback. We knew in the opening game that he could run, and he ran too much. He ran 16 times, and we went, oh, at least I did. Maybe you did as well. We went, oh, he's going to get himself killed. Nobody can run 16 times a game. And then in the Giants game, in week 2, was it? Week 2, I think, where he took that hit and he had to miss a play. It looked like broken ribs. Well, now he does have a rib injury. But this is another part of playing quarterback in the NFL. You play through it. He missed most of the game that he got hurt in, and they were able to close it out with Marcus Mariota, who was acquired for not exactly that. He was acquired so they could win games with Daniels' help, but more importantly, he was required to help develop Daniels. He's been through it. He was the number 2 pick of the draft. He was a Heisman Trophy winner, was a starter early in his career, and, things haven't worked out, but he's got a great attitude, and Daniels has gone out of his way to say how much he's helped him. But playing hurt is part of what it takes in this league. I remember talking to Jeff Bostic about this years ago. Bostic would say at the beginning of training camp, check your body right now, because this is the last time you're going to feel completely healthy until the season comes to an end. He says everybody's going to get hurt. Everybody's going to have some type of an injury that he's dealing with. Hopefully it's not a season-ending injury. And fortunately for Daniels, it has not been a season-ending injury. It hasn't stopped his streak of starting games. He has started all 9 of the games this year. Asked yesterday about where he stands with his health heading into the Pittsburgh game on Sunday.
I mean, I feel better. Obviously, it's a progressive thing. Rest and time is the only thing that's going to heal it. But other than that, man, I feel good.
Yeah, and he's being treated during the game. If you see, it's either a heating pad or a cold pad that he gets on his ribs in between series, and he's looked great. I mean, he's making the long throws and he's making the accurate throws. That first touchdown pass that he threw to Terry McLaurin, where he threw it right in the exact spot on the move. I mean, that's accuracy that you see from guys who've been in the league for 10 years. He's got that. And then we talk about the recalibration, the trade for Marshon Lattimore the other day, where they gave up 2 significant draft picks to get him. And it's such a perfect deal for the Commanders. He's got a lot of money left on his contract, but after this year, it's not guaranteed. And he's under a minimum deal for this year. That's the way they restructured it in New Orleans. So it's really a no-lose situation. If he works out, you keep him on the deal for the next 2 years, or you restructure that so you can create more cap room. But they got cap room. So this is not only a team-friendly deal in terms of money, but it's also a deal that I don't think they make if they're 2-7 instead of 7-2. Dan Quinn says you're always trying to improve the football team. That's kind of like, dancing past the issue. This is a team that's now thinking in a different direction than I think they were in September. And this was Daniels on exactly that yesterday.
When they make a move like bringing Marshon in at the deadline, do you look at that as them expressing real confidence in the rest of you guys that they'd be willing to push some chips to the middle of the table to get a number one guy in here for you guys at this point of the season?
I think it just speaks that they want what's best for the team, and we trust what they're doing. Obviously, they do their job, and they're hired, and we expect them to. They expect from themselves to do their job at a high level, just like they expect us to go out there and put our best foot forward. So, anything that Adam and his staff is doing, man, we trust it, no matter what. Is now how can we have Marshon indulge in our brotherhood, and how can we bring him along to go out there and when those Sundays come and go out there and make plays and be confident.
Yeah, you just leave it up to the GM. Let him do his job. That's another big part of the change in this organization. They have great division of labor. You don't have a coach-centric operation where the general managers, which we had with Martin Mayhew, who is still with the team, by the way, I think mostly in a scouting role, and Marty Herney reporting to Ron Rivera. This is the general manager who's hired the coach. The players trust in the coach, and they trust in the general manager. Benjamin St. Juste having a good year at corner, but others have been shaky. Emmanuel Forbes has been a healthy scratch a couple of times. As a matter of fact, They made a roster move with F.A. Abada, releasing him to make the room for Lattimore. But I think if Lattimore is healthy, it's possible that they do a clean sweep out of here of the 4 number 1 picks that were made under the Rivera era, and Emmanuel Forbes is released. They tried to trade him at the deadline, couldn't get any takers. So I think that the whole thing is turning over in the secondary. And this was St. Juste yesterday on getting some help now at the other corner spot.
I get to have like a player next to me that's been there, done that, and did it at a high level. So I think it speaks to, what Coach Quinn and, the whole culture, how they're putting all the chips in, to get all the wins and make sure that everyone around us can learn, and especially us with DBs now with a guy like that, we get to learn a lot.
To that point of how they're, in a sense, putting their chips to the center of the table and be like, we believe in this team. We think you can make a run this year. What does that do for a locker room?
That's all the confidence we need, honestly, from the top people on the front office, giving us all the tools and resources that we need to go out there and win, and especially what we've been doing since the beginning of the season. And now with the addition of an elite player, it just shows that, they have the confidence in us and they see us going forward this season. So I'm just happy to be here and work and keep winning. So that's cool.
You know Marshon's skill set. What does he bring to this defense? What can he add?
He can just take away half the field, honestly. I've been studying him, been studying him for a long time. I mean, as a top corner. He can literally take away half of the field, so then we can work on so many other different things on the other side of the field. He can follow wide receiver ones just like, I can do it. And now we get to he get to share the workload, the responsibility with all the other DBs that have been playing well. So it's just a great addition overall.
Take away half the field. Now, he hasn't really done that the last couple of years. He's had only 1 interception the last 2 seasons, but if he can regain the form that he had early in his career, that's going to be huge. Also, from the offensive side, the message that this sends, same question really that was asked of Jayden Daniels by David Aldridge, is the message that this is sending throughout the locker room. This is Brown on that.
We might have sent a message to y'all, but I mean, we know, what we have. We know that we can do something this year. So it's not a surprise to us that we made a move like this.
Yeah. That's what they've been telling the players. And the one thing that Quinn has done a really good job of, and a lot of coaches say one at a time, but he's never talked about what the position they could be in if they win games. He's narrowed it down week. What you're going to do this week, concentrate on that. So they started practicing yesterday for Pittsburgh. It's all on Pittsburgh, and then they're going to have a quick turnaround as they got to play the Eagles. They're going to talk about that, and the advanced scouts are working on that, but the team is not really. I mean, this is what they've managed to do week to week to keep the focus on what's next. Lattimore is 28 years old. He is 28 years old, which for mortal corners is considered to be old. I kind of laugh about that because we just had the Darrell Green number retirement ceremony. Darrell Green was 28 years old when he had those two spectacular plays in back-to-back weeks when they went to the Super Bowl and won the Super Bowl in 1988. That was the one where he had the punt return against the Chicago Bears where he tore a rib cage cartilage and then played the following week and knocked the pass away from Darren Nelson at the end of the game to preserve the win against the Minnesota Vikings. He played in another Super Bowl and even was a player who hung around played well into his late 30s. He was a Pro Bowler at like 37 and played his last game at the age of 42. But for mere mortals, 28-year-old corners are kind of, at the back half of their careers. And this is Peters on, and I think this is going to be more on what they look at the end of the season, whether they want to pick up the last 2 years of his non-guaranteed contract, which would have about $60 million left to go, or to move on. And this is Peters on kind of the criteria for that.
One of the things that and I don't think he's going to drop off at all anytime. I really don't. But, if he did or if any player did, you look at things like how smart are they, how instinctive are they, can they make up for those deficiencies if they get to that point? And he has all that, and really, to be honest, I didn't really even, I'm not concerned about that. And we have him this year and then 2 more years under contract, and we'll adjust that when we need to. But he's, we feel like he's at the top of his game still.
If he's at the top of his game, that improves the secondary dramatically, and that has really been the weakest link of the team, I think. I think that's the one thing that has hurt them, and the fact that they're getting better play up front, and the linebackers have been great. I mean, Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu, those were 2 incredible pickups. And I keep talking about the Bobby Wagner deal as being like the Jack Pardee deal that was made. Bobby Wagner, free agent. Jack Pardee is part of the Ramskin trade that George Allen made in 71, where you got essentially a coach on the field, a quarterback and play caller on the field who's putting people in the right positions and is on his way to the Hall of Fame and still has something left in the tank. That's been remarkable. A couple more things from Dan Quinn from his news conference yesterday. One of them is that on the message, and this is a lot of the questioning that went on yesterday, the message that it sends in bringing in a veteran corner and giving up some of your future in draft picks to bring him in a season that was supposed to be rebuilding.
Dan, when you make such a bold move at the trade deadline, acquiring a high-caliber player like a Marshon Lattimore, what type of messaging do you think that gives to maybe the rest of the league and even your own fan base?
Well, I'll start with the fan base because it's what I would tell the team first is, our rule on the team is protect the team. And our theme of our program is competition. And we're going to absolutely relentlessly compete at everything. And that's a chance to make our team better, make you better, make the group better, like Adam and his group or myself and the coaches. Like, we're going to dig in hard to do that. And so what does Marshon mean? He's a competitor. And so we're adding a real dog-ass competitor into a group of guys that like to fight and like to battle. And so to me, that's an extension of competing, to say we're not going to miss a moment, to add a competitor onto our team. And so that has nothing to do with the league. It's just about us, really. That's how I think of it.
By the way, on competing, and I know I'm catching up on a lot of things because I've been out most of the week, but the touchdown pass to Terry McLaurin at the end of the first half, that is such a refreshing change of what we had. It wasn't even just the last few years. It's gone on for a long time here. And automatic field goal from there. They passed that up on it's first down, but they're out of timeouts. So, I mean, I guess theoretically they could have thrown an incomplete pass in the end zone and kicked a field goal from there. But they're out of timeout, so if it's caught in the field of play, that runs out the clock. They go for it, and the ball is just placed beautifully to Terry McLaurin. This is what they've done throughout the year. Ron Rivera had a tendency, for all the Riverboat Ron stuff, he would sit on the ball in situations at the end of the half so as not to turn it over. They're not doing that here. They're being aggressive. They're being competitive. That's a big part of it. Last thing is how they've been able to use the entire roster. And you had Brian Robinson out last week. Chris Rodriguez had some great plays. I mean, he He's a guy who I thought would be a big addition, would be one in the running back rotation, and he really hasn't stuck on the roster for most of the year. But when you have an injury, you bring him up, he produces, and that's the message that Quinn is sending to all, not just the 53, but the 17 on the practice squad as well.
I did remind the team, and I emphasized the importance of being ready now, and that could be for every person in every meeting room and every player. When your number's called and you deliver, it's a big deal. And I think Chris Rodriguez was the latest to show that he's down for the cause. And I just wanted to make sure that's the responsibility of all 70 on the roster. And when we're developing people, it's to get ready to play. And so that was a good message, for all the guys to dig in together and get better. And so that's kind of what we chase, on a regular basis.
Rodriguez, by the way, won't be wearing number 23 this week. He gave it. He didn't ask for money or a car or something like that. He gave it to Lattimore. He said he's a veteran. He's earned it, and he'll take another number. And again, I think that's part of the program that's going on here, that they keep talking about the brotherhood. That plays into it. There's been a lot of lip service to that in recent years. Has not been the case this year. All right, little preview for the Pittsburgh Steelers. The point that Dan Quinn makes about facing Russell Wilson, we'll get to that and more, plus the Bob Costas conversation about his decision not to do baseball play-by-play anymore. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Graham's coming up at 11 o'clock. I'm sure he gave you his thoughts yesterday on the Marshon Lattimore deal, but that was before there was reaction from players and coaches about that yesterday, so I'm sure he'll have a lot more to say about that and what is going on in a magical season for the Commanders, which can get even better if they win on Sunday against the Pittsburgh Steelers. They would double their win total. Looks like, why wouldn't you expect Mike Tomlin to know what he's doing? But he clearly made the right move in putting Russell Wilson in at quarterback, and it looks like he's got some of his old form back. Now, you remember this. This is only last season. It's a little more than a year ago, but based on the change that's happened in the organization, almost seems like a decade ago. But even though they only had 4 wins, Washington last year was 2-0. That's right. They opened the season by beating Arizona at home, and then they went on the road in week 2 to play the Denver Broncos. And we didn't really know how things were going to work out there, that they got a new coach in there and maybe Russell Wilson gets revived after a bad season. And this game came down to the nitty-gritty end. I mean, the Commanders played well. They scored a lot of points, but Denver had a chance to do to Washington. Well, not quite what Washington did to the Bears because they won the game on the Hail Mary, but Denver had a chance to tie the game, and reality is they should have done it. There was a clear pass interference on the 2-point conversion, which wasn't called, and they escaped with a 2-point victory, 35-33. But on the last play of regulation, Russell Wilson reared back and threw a 50-yard touchdown pass, a 50-yard TD at the gun. And if the 2-point conversion had been successful, they would have tied the game at 35, but they didn't get it done. In that game, he threw for 308 yards and 3 touchdowns. And in previewing this week's matchup against now Wilson and the Pittsburgh Steelers, this was Dan Quinn on what he sees now from Russell Wilson, even at this stage of the game.
When I think about Russ, the first thing that pops to my mind is this is a remarkable deep ball thrower. And it's what he has absolutely earned and been known for down inside and outside the pocket, where he's got the ability to be able to throw on the run, 50, 60 yards down the field to a spot that only, his receiver can get to it, or off a big play pass. So that, to me, is what, sets him apart, is he's got a, strong arm, big hands. He can absolutely rip it, but it's the downfield big shot plays. When those explosive plays happen, those are game changers, and that's what I think Russ's superpower is. Like, deep ball accuracy is not everybody has that.
And remember, Quinn goes back to the beginning with Russell Wilson. He was the defensive coordinator on the Super Bowl team that Wilson won, and I think he was still there when they went back and lost the following year. So he's seen him from the beginning. Is he what he was at the beginning? No, he's not. But he still has that ability to throw the deep ball. and they have to be prepared for that, probably without Marshon Lattimore, who's still dealing with a hamstring injury and is unlikely to play. Bob Costas, he did take some criticism during the American League Championship Series that he broadcast on, I think it was TNT, and he is one of the best to have ever done it. And the criticism that he took, I don't think was necessarily warranted. Yeah, maybe he didn't have his complete fastball, but he kind of knew it going into this season. And he's announced that he's not going to be doing any more network play-by-play for baseball, which is his first love, and explained it in a sit-down interview that he did with Tom Verducci the other day.
I knew for more than a year that this would be the end of it. You and I discussed it about a year and a half ago, and I felt that I couldn't consistently reach my past standard. There might have been individual games or stretches within games or moments in games that were just the same as if it was the 1990s or the early 21st century, but I couldn't string enough of them together, and I have too much regard for the game, for the craft, and for whatever my own standard has been to hit beneath my lifetime batting average, which is why I'm grateful to the MLB Network for replaying the sounds of baseball, because players have this advantage over people in almost any other profession. My guy, Mickey Mantle, hit well below his lifetime average his last few years. But even a kid who never saw him play can go to Baseball Reference and see what the career was like. And I just felt like in the last couple of years, I couldn't quite reach that. And what I hoped for this year, the people I worked for knew it, and a few other people knew it. I just hoped to end on a grace note.
Well, no doubt about that. I mean, greatness is the mark of your career going back to the beginning. Can we talk about the beginning, the very beginning, calling baseball? 1980.
Yep.
You're 28 years old.
And look like I was 14.
You get to call a Yankees-Tigers game, a good game. Tigers won 7-6. Did you know at that moment, Bob, that you were in the perfect place for you? That's where you belonged.
Yes. Yes. For all the things that I've been lucky enough to do, and I've appreciated all of them, the Olympics, the NBA, other things, baseball was always closest to my heart. And what I'm about to say in response to your question may seem corny. In the mid-1980s, I'm doing the Game of the Week with Tony Kubek, who I owe so much to. And Tony said, on Fridays, we're at Wrigley Field, so it was always an afternoon game then, there weren't any lights, sit behind the plate with the scouts. You'll get a lot of stuff from the scouts, who mattered more than pre-analytics. And there was a beloved legendary scout named Huey Alexander, who had lost his left hand in a farm accident or an oil rig accident of some kind, which derailed his promising baseball career. And I'm sitting behind the plate with him, and we're talking. And at one point he says, "Damn, Bobby, you're a baseball man." That meant everything to me. When I was a little kid listening to games on the car radio so I could track my dad's bets and pulling in Ernie Harwell from Detroit and Bob Prince from Pittsburgh and Harry Carey and Jack Buck from St. Louis, I dreamed of in some way being involved in baseball. And to have been involved as long as I have, and to have the appreciation that I had within the game for most of that time, I didn't want to diminish that. So it's time not to stop the other stuff, but it's time to stop calling the games.
All right, that's a sweet story of what he heard from the scout about he's a baseball man, and he loved that. But let me back up just 1 second. Like a lot of us who grew up listening to baseball, unfortunately, I didn't have baseball after I was 13 years old, after the Washington Senators left. But I remember listening to Ron Manchin and Shelby Whitfield, and even a year of Tony Roberts doing the games. That was great to go to bed and turn on the radio and listen to the games. I think a lot of us of my generation did that because there weren't that many games on television, and that was really a cool thing to do in the summertime. But I wasn't tracking my father's bets, and as much of a love affair as he's had with baseball and the quaint story of listening to baseball games on the radio, he was doing it to track his father's bets. You know, are we going to lose so much money that we won't be able to buy groceries this week? I don't know if it was that serious, but he talked about the problems that he had and being at his father's funeral and somebody giving him a wad of cash that his father had been owed. You know, things like that. The Runyon-esque side of this that goes along with the quaint idea of listening to baseball on the radio, which made him fall in love with the game, but fell in love with it for a slightly different reason, but became that good at it that he's in the class of guys like Vince Scully, that people will mention his name as one of the greats of all time. And this now transfers to television because while radio was and still remains a huge part of baseball, and we're lucky to have a great team in Charlie Slows and Dave Jagler. They've done great work over the years, including the World Series year with the Nationals. It is television now, which televises just about every game. I mean, even now, like if a game winds up on Peacock, like, oh, what are you doing here? But there was a time when you had maybe a package of local games, a little different in New York because, as I understand it, both the Mets and the Yankees had over the air channels. I think it was Channel 11 for the Yankees and Channel 9 for the Mets, and they did most of the games. And New York had a big enough audience where you could do that. But they wouldn't cancel primetime shows on CBS to put the Senators on, maybe occasionally. But you have a lot of Sunday afternoon games, maybe some Saturday night games, things like that. But Costas did the national game. I think he succeeded Kurt Gowdy, who did it for a long time. Joe Garaggioli, I think he did both color and play-by-play, if I'm not mistaken. But Costas got his break when he was a very young man. His story is well documented. He was at Syracuse, and he submitted a tape for the Spirits of St. Louis, the ABA team that broadcasts its games on one of the great stations in this country, KMOX, which has an enormous signal, 50,000-watt signal, and for many years was the gold standard for doing sports on the radio, long before sports radio came along with WFAN in the late 80s. And he got his opportunity at a young age to not only do that and segue to doing other things on KMOX, but got his big break at 28 years old, and he's doing one of the premier sporting events on television, the Game of the Week on NBC, which always came on at 2 o'clock, and talk to Tom Verducci about that experience.
The players used to call it the Game of the World. They'd see me and Tony or Vin and Joe at the batting cage. We're the Game of the World today. And there were some Saturday afternoon games that got higher ratings than some World Series games have gotten in this past year. Not Yankees-Dodgers, but some. So that's how big it was. And it turns out to be the signature game of a Hall of Fame career.
Let's listen in.
Tito Landrum playing Sandberg very deep in left field. Into left center field and deep. This is a tie ball game. 1-1 pitch. He hits it to deep left center. Look out. Do you believe it? It's gone. Sandberg in the Cubs' last at bat has twice delivered a game-tying home run, a solo shot of the ninth, a two-run blast with 2 out of the 10th. There may be a new player of the game.
I love that, Bob, because, it's like a great singer. You always need to leave some place to go to for the biggest moments.
Yeah.
But you didn't oversell it. I hear the excitement in your voice, but it's still about Sandberg more than it is about you.
Yeah, and it's television. I've never been someone who's going to go to the very highest octave on a sacrifice fly in the 4th inning. And there may be some people out there who now prefer that. That's never been my approach. You got to save something for the biggest moments, and that was one of the biggest ones. And something else occurs to me here. Jack Buck was just down the hallway with Mike Shannon because they were doing the Cardinal games on the radio. And Jack is one of the greatest of the great. You make a top 5 of all time, and Jack Buck is there. And toward the end of his life and career, he was getting older and he had Parkinson's. And he used to get laughs around St. Louis by saying, I gave the Cardinals the best years of my life, and now I'm going to give them the worst. And you could do that as a local announcer because they'll allow for that. You're beloved. You're their guy. I think for a national announcer, it's a different calculus.
That's Bob Costas on his decision to step down doing play-by-play of baseball in the MLB network on a national basis. Last thing from the conversation, about 15 minutes if you want to watch it on YouTube. This is about the one of the most famous World Series games in history and 2 of the really famous calls that were ever made, and there's a lot of comparisons with what happened this year in the World Series with Freddie Freeman hitting that walk-off grand slam in the opening game of the series, which propelled the Dodgers to go on and win the World Series. But the two calls that were made on the Kirk Gibson home run in 1988 off Dennis Eckersley, and an underdog Dodger team beat the A's in that World Series. And the two calls will be remembered forever. Vin Scully, who was doing it on TV and did it the way you should do it on TV, make the call and lay out. He said, "She is gone." And he let it marinate for a while. The pictures tell the story. And he said, in the year of the improbable, the impossible has happened. He always had the great words for the moment. And Jack Buck, and I think his call is even more famous. It's on radio, may have been heard by less people than saw it on TV, or maybe, the way things work out with people listening all over the world and Armed Forces Radio, so forth, maybe the same amount or more heard it. But he said, "I can't believe what I just saw." Everybody remembers those two calls. What may not be remembered is that Bob Costas interviewed Kirk Gibson right after the home run. And in case you didn't see it or forgot about it, this was a young Bob Costas in 1988 with Kirk Gibson.
I guarantee you this, the parking lot at Chavez Ravine is empty. Nobody has left their seats, and now the man of the hour is back out on the field. Kirk Gibson, have you ever had a feeling like this?
Well, it's hard to match, I'll say that, and it's, I guess, a storybook. I was very disappointed today because I knew I couldn't play. I knew I'd be a detriment, and I got an injection today, and I was very sore, but I saw the opportunity. I knew we could get a guy on base. The pitcher was coming up, and I figured if I got out there and the fans started cheering, that I could suck it up for 1AB, and maybe something good would happen, and it happened.
You talk about all-star teams. The other sideline reporter was Marv Albert.
Right.
And in the booth, Vin Scully and Bob Uecker.
No, Garagiola.
Joe Garagiola, right. That is an all-star team.
And on the Gibson home run, you have two of the greatest calls in baseball history. Scully on television and Buck on the radio. I don't believe what I just saw. There was a lot of broadcasting royalty there for sure.
And Tommy Lasorda gives you credit for motivating the troops.
Yeah. Tommy would do anything, A, to get a laugh, and B, to, as you said, motivate the troops. And that's the only at-bat Gibson had in the whole series. And then shortly after that, Mike Marshall was sidelined too. So the Dodgers put a lineup out there that looked like a B squad in a spring training game. Their whole lineup had fewer home runs than McGuire and Canseco individually. So I said something to the effect of, Dodger pitching aside, and their pitching is excellent. And remember, they were up 2-1 at this point in the series. It was Game 4. And Hershiser was going to go the next day. So no one thought that they didn't have a shot. But I said this has to be one of the weakest lineups ever to take the field for a World Series game. True then, true now. Lasorda's in the visitors' clubhouse. He hears it. He sees it. See that guy? Even effing Costas doesn't think we have an effing chance. And Marv is interviewing Lasorda because he made so many moves in the game. Squeeze play, gave Mike Davis the hit sign on 3-0, and he homered. All kinds of maneuvers designed to make up for the talent deficit. So we name him the player of the game, and he says, this award should go to Bob Costas. So then I walk over, and he looks over and he goes, yeah, we'll call you again when we need you. It was all a joke, but it wasn't a joke to Tony La Russa, because now his favorite team is down 3-1. So before Game 5, I got to go up to La Russa and explain that it wasn't a setup. I wasn't in cahoots with Tommy. It's just who Tommy is. La Russa understood.
Yeah, I would think so. Bob Costas, one of the greatest to ever do it. He's not completely getting away from broadcasting. He's going to do shows and interviews and so forth, but someone who was part of the soundtrack of my youth. I mean, I remember we'd have baseball practice in the morning, or maybe a game or something like that, and then we'd go to somebody's house and watch the game of the week on NBC. And I remember, I didn't see Willie Mays play many times. I got to see him pinch hit in the All-Star game here in 1969, but there's a particular play that they show from time to time when discussing those great days of the NBC game of the week, where Willie Mays, who's in, I think, his last year or second to last year with the Giants, goes up to catch a ball at the fence at Candlestick Park with Bobby Bonds, Barry Bonds' father. And they collide because I guess the communication isn't good enough. I would always get out of the way for Willie Mays if I were Bonds, but he didn't. Maybe didn't hear it, whatever, and they collide. It looks like Mays comes down with the ball, and it's just a great play in the career of a great, maybe the greatest baseball player ever lived, who passed away over the summer, and Costas part of the soundtrack of that. Sorry that he's not going to be doing games anymore. Really nice tribute column from John Feinstein in the Post about that the other day. And, it's he says that he didn't want to be below his standard to me anyway, and maybe to most who are not, nitpicky fans. I don't think his standard had dropped. And I was reminded of this when Vin Scully finally stopped doing baseball at the age of 88. I think he was 88 going on 89. He had done the Dodgers for 67 years. Though he had, cut down on his travel schedule in the summer. I think he was doing only home games and, basically half the schedule. But when he did games, he still had it. And I remember hearing his last game, part of it, his farewell tribute. It didn't sound like he should go. He's still at his fastball. And I kind of feel the same way about Costas. All right, Bram is coming up next. I'll see you back here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.